All right, great. Thanks for tuning in, people. Peace and power, peace and love, and peace and poetry and prose. And welcome to a special edition of a CavanKerry Press reading where it's a 2NJ Presses night. So you have myself, Dimitri Reyes, representing and hosting for CavanKerry Press. And then I have my lovely co-host, Gessy Alvarez, who will be representing Digging Press tonight. And we're in for a reading where you're going to be able to get a splay of some of the different New Jersey authors that may not be New Jersey based, but still have a home in New Jersey because they're associated with these two great presses. Toot toot. So here's how the evening is going to go. We're going to be going back and forth between starting with Digging Press folks and then CavanKerry Press folks. And you're going to get both prose and poetry this evening. If you are on Facebook, if you are right now in the Zoom with us, if you have a question for our authors at any time throughout the night, please put it in the chat, because after the readings, we are going to have a short discussion. And if you have any questions about what you've just heard, you'll be able to get your answers questions there. Again, I'm going to say, my name is Dimitri Reyes. I'm the Marketing Communications Director at CavanKerry Press. And I've also had the honor of being one of the authors published with Gessy and Digging Press. But enough about me. I'm going to pitch it over to Gessy so she can introduce and talk a bit more about the press, and then we'll start the reading now. Gessy?
Thank you, Dimitri. Hi, everyone. I'm Gessy Alvarez, and I'm the publisher at Digging Press. And I do want to thank Dimitri for all your hard work. We really appreciate you putting this together tonight. And thank you to CavanKerry Press for inviting us to partake in the event. We've admired you from afar for a long time and are truly honored to co-host tonight. I also want to give a brief shout out to the SMOL Fair organizers. They've been tremendously supportive. For those folks who may not know, SMOL Fair is happening right now. It's a virtual book fair, and you can find out more about them at SMOL, SMOL Fair.com. The fair ends on March 26th. So do visit their website and follow them on their social media platforms. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Digging Press. We are a small independent publisher. We publish Digging Through the Fat, which is a journal for cultural omnivores. And there we feature new fiction and poetry. We also publish a chapbook series and a biennial poetry series. Our inaugural poetry series is forthcoming this spring and is guest edited by Ernesto Abe Thea. And tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing two of our chapbook winners from the past, Mandy-Suzanne Wong and Dimitri Reyes. A second edition of Mandy-Suzanne's chapbook, Awabi, is forthcoming in April and is available for pre-order now. And Dimitri's chapbook, Every 1st and 15th, is available for purchase now at the shop as well. We are working on some second printings. In Country Like You by Abigail Carr-Klassen was our second chapbook winner, and her chapbook is going to come out soon, hopefully in the summer or fall. And our fourth chapbook in the series, Submersion by Marie Baleo, is also in the works. So we're very busy with the chapbooks, and lots of good things are happening. You can find out more about the press and look through our shop by going to diggingpress.com. So thank you all of you for joining us tonight. Dimitri?
Okay, all right. So Gessy, would you mind introducing Mandy since she's the first one up?
Sure. Mandy-Suzanne Wong is up. Mandy-Suzanne Wong's Awabi, a duet of short stories, won the inaugural Digging Press Chapbook Series Award. Her first novel, Drafts of a Suicide Note, Regal House, was a Forward Indies Permafrost Book Prize and International Book Award finalist. And her essay collection, Listen, We All Bleed by New Rivers, was a Penn Galbraith nominee and SPD nonfiction bestseller. Her next novel, The Box, will be published by Grey Wolf in 2023. You can find out more about Mandy-Suzanne's work at mandysuzannewong.com. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited. And I'm going to read from my chapbook Owabi. The first story in the book is called Sumiko's Daughters, and I'm going to read from that. So, on almost every day of her long life, Sumiko Iseya, née Nagata, jumped into the Pacific Ocean and dove through shadows blue on blue to frigid depths of perhaps 15 meters. She was an ama, an ocean woman, who learned to dive from her foremothers and learned to breathe from whales. She swam down to the seafloor with neither scuba tank nor snorkel, down to the very bottoms of the reefs and the heart of the kelp forest, and there she stayed for as long as a whole minute, kicking her way up at last, dragging a load of slippery and shatterable things, breaking the surface with a gasp like a cry of pain, exhaled in a long whistle, which some called the sea's lament. She deposited her confused and cringing cargo in the floating wooden barrel tethered to her waist and dove again. In 1 hour, Sumiko made 50 dives. She searched for snails, sazaye with silver shells like inverted whirlpools, and their mother-of-pearl abalone sisters, owabi, with such expressive eyes. She also hunted their cousins, octopuses, urchins, spiny lobsters, sea stars, seaweeds, and sea cucumbers, the chubby and slimy namako. But owabi were above all. Noshi owabi was the sacred sustenance of the divine kami Amaterasu, ancestress of all Japan, and luxury markets paid 8,000 yen per pound for owabi sashimi. Sumiko's great-great-grandmother learned to dive from her mother, who learned from her own mother and grandmother. She followed owabi up and down the southern coast. As the Edo period waned, she and her daughter slipped between fiefdoms in a wooden boat. Her husband steadied the boat while the ama submerged. He looked into the clear water, watching over them. Sometimes he used a rope or a bamboo pole to whisk them through the final sun-splashed meters of their ascent. The women obeyed him in all things but one. His wife told him where to steer the boat. The household moved with her sense of the ocean. Her earnings were sizable, for there were fewer funado ama deep diving from boats than there were kachido ama swimming out from shore to work the shallower waters. They sold their snails to whichever shoreline village had charge of the water in which they dove. Villages welcomed them, sometimes giving them land in addition to fishing rights, for every village owed a certain amount of noshi owabi to its feudal lord, who took it to the shrines and gave it to the kami. Sumiko's grandmother told stories of noble folk who envied her great-great-grandmother. She was always chasing discoveries, free to be a loudmouth and a dirty one at that. High-born women had to be quiet and sweet and agree with the men in everything, and they were often afraid. There was always some backstabbing intrigue going on in their big houses. Fisherfolk had simpler lives. We retain the kind of humanity that fancy people forgot when they got lost in all that power and silk. The humanity of fishes, of owabi and kami. Of course, that's how it was then. Nowadays, everything's different. Everything hangs by a thread, and we're the ones getting lost. Sumiko's mother and grandmother taught her to dive as her great-great-grandmother dived, naked except for a bandana with protective symbols, a loincloth and mulberry rope around her waist. The rope tied her to a boat, a netted float, or a floating barrel depending on her prey. Strapped to her back was her nami, a wooden spatula she used to wrestle snails from rocks. She carried her prey to the surface in a net bag with a wide mesh. Luck and a strong wave just might send a sea snail tumbling gently to freedom. So relaxed was that wide mesh. Sumiko's grandmother resisted the diving mask. It would make them see too well, she said. They would find and kill too many hidden snails, and the mask magnified everything. It made her fearful of kidnapping babies. 10.6 centimeters, use a ruler a smidgen smaller and you have to release them. Find somewhere dark and narrow with kelp nearby. Give awabi babies every chance. Her grandmother balked at the wetsuit too. Disrespectful, she said, to go to the ocean like that. You don't see whales going around like that, like umibozu. Plus, you're more likely to snag something and get stuck than you drown. Wouldn't happen if you dressed the way your mother made you. The umibozu were demons. They were glossy, black, humanoid giants who thrashed the sea and stirred up deadly typhoons. Sumiko imagined her grandmother in a glossy black skin-tight outfit, sneaking up on a boat and leaping out of the water to give all the men on the vessel the fright of their lives. The idea made Sumiko giggle. It made her grandmother scowl. Yet it was Sumiko's grandmother, while her daughter-in-law, Sumiko's mother, roared with laughter, who was the first Nagata Ama to wear clothes into the water. Skirt and blouse, pearl white, they'd go down in history as the traditional costume of Japanese Ama. These outfits, amagi, offered little warmth, flailed in the water, and were designed in the 20th century by the Mikimoto Pearl Company in Toba. World wars brought an end to migrant work. In each village, a sea tenure system enforced by a local co-op granted fishing rights only to residents. Sumiko's village was a ward of Toba. Her grandmother worked part-time for the pioneer of cultured pearls, diving up oysters, taking them back down after someone in the factory slipped tiny irritants into their shells. The pearls were world famous, as were Mikimoto's Ama, but the sight of their thick, brown, naked bodies appalled the factory's Western visitors. Sumiko was a senior citizen when she got her first amagi, handmade by a friend in the Ama Preservation Association. She never dived in it, only wore it to her night job. Neither she nor her mother, her great-great-grandmother, nor any of their friends ever hunted pearls, but she said traditional without a whiff of sneering. As a child, she asked, doesn't it hurt them, ripping them open, shoving rocks down their throats? This made her grandmother feel like a sapling in an earthquake. At the factory, they said they were helping oysters. Culturing pearls helped the oyster population to recover from previous generations overharvesting. Maybe they were right, but so was Sumiko. Torturing oysters was no better than killing them. Sumiko didn't know it, but this was her first exposure to the feeling that drove every Ama to frustration, the sense that their efforts to conserve were all for nothing. The co-op allowed each household one wetsuit. Sumiko's mother claimed it. She was a skillful funado who breastfed Sumiko on the beach between dives. We were already diving 5 to 6 hours every day. If all of us stayed even longer, toasty warm in our wetsuits, think how many more awabi would have died. Sumiko had no opportunity to wriggle into a wetsuit until she was almost 30. Growing up, she dived in cotton shorts and a bandana, imitating her mother's straight down dive, feet skyward shooting. Her mother taught her, as she'd learned from her mother, to live and dive and die in the current that commingled predators and prey and daughter mothers as it swirled and surged and flagged and swirled up again in time. Best day of my life, Sumiko would say, when she walked into the ocean with her mother and grandmother for the first time, a young teen with her own nomi, mask and barrel. They walked without mincing, though waves towered over them. They laughed when the ocean slapped them in the face with the full force of its grandeur, 3 generations with their faces to the blue on blue. Sumiko's mother had a tendency to grumble later in life. Back then, I could catch 40 awabi a day. 10 years ago, I was down to 4 a day. Nowadays, if you can find one, that's really something. Even though there are no more feudal lords, it's as if we're ruled by numbers. How many, how long, how short, how much? With chattering teeth, red eyes, and heavy barrels, the Ama emerged from the water and huddled, 10 or 12 to a group, shuddering, kimono swaddled, around a small pit fire in the Amagoya, their bamboo hut. Later Goya were built with corrugated tin sheets held down by rocks. They had showers and places to hang nets and floats, drying wetsuits, sodden underwear. Some even had doors, which the Ama left open to keep an eye on the ocean. Though they sneaked emulous looks at other people's catches, they would run back to the sea if anyone came into difficulty. The best thing about being an Ama is the ocean. Second best, the snails. Third, the Amagoya. That's your real home. Thank you.
Mandy, thank you so much. Thank you. It's so great to hear your work, and also to start finding common threads that I'm already thinking of with other folks that we're reading with this evening. Shout outs to Gretchen Primack that's in the audience too. I love the poetry community because we find out that we have loved ones in the audience that are connected to us somehow. So
You guys know each other?
we both share Gretchen. Yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
That's so
And
awesome.
actually, a funny story before I pitch it over to some of my CavanKerry. Actually, you know what? I'll save it for my part. So I'll go back to that. Where's my time? Mandy, I'm going to beat you out and we'll be talking about this in our Q&A later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'll see you very, very soon. So now I am about to introduce Kat Doty. And I want to preface this with Kat Doty just being a wonderful, wonderful human being, as well as a huge mentor to so many folks in New Jersey. And I'm so happy to have her tonight as a very selfish and still very emerging poet. I really relished in getting these folks that'll be with us tonight, and knowing that Catherine Doty is one of our authors at CavanKerry Press, and also now someone that I am in communication with. It is truly an honor. But to talk about that honor, let me actually read her bio. So Kat Doty is a poet, cartoonist, and educator from Paterson, New Jersey. She is the author of Momentum, CavanKerry Press 2004, a volume of poems, and Just Kidding, a collection of cartoons, Avocet Press 1999, and most currently Wonderama, which just came out with us last year, which you'll hear from today. Doty has received prizes and fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, and the Academy of American Poets. An MFA graduate of the Iowa Writers Center Workshop, she has taught for the Geraldine R. Dodge Poetry Foundation, the Frost Place, the New York Public Library, and many schools. Her poems have appeared widely in journals and anthologies. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Kat Doty.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. Hi. I'm reading from Wonderama. Thank you, CavanKerry, with all my heart. And the stories in here all concern Paterson, New Jersey, and follow the trajectories of, a couple of people's lives. And I'm just going to read a few. This is called Standing, 1964. See her clothes as they drop in the yellow weeds, t-shirt and shorts in the upraised arms of the yarrow. Her arms are lifted too. She exults or prays. She is narrow and flat, her skin white as surrender. The thatchy back of her head is a patch of knots. Her teeth are rotted, but then so are theirs, bared as the boys reach to touch her, not unkindly. They are 16, and she is half their age. Above them, a star goes dark, or many darken. A sky-cleaving jet unfurls 4 slender trails. She feels like the pine cone seed that split the boulder, the bullet exploding the head of the president. Once invisible, once inconsequential, now singular, at last in her rightful place. And this is called Nomen. And for people who like words that represent small pieces of things, the nomen is what sticks up in the sundial and casts the shadow. Nomen. Softly lit in a murk of amniotic dust, the only 2 faces in the hallway of St. Ag's School. A clock with its echoing voice and shifty hands, and a girl in a cloud of perplexity and distinction, the only 3rd grader who cannot learn to tell time. Told to return only when she can name the hour, she watches the red hand hiccup around the track, and the longer black one skip forward, click by click, and the shorter black one, like her, not do much at all, Teachers lean from their doorways to witness her fecklessness, then turn like the painted figures and cuckoo clocks to vanish into the movements of their classrooms. She's as likely to grasp the time as to knit a sock. Standing and dozing, she jumps at the bell for prayers, those words she knows by rote, if not by heart, that are spoken each day at this time, just as God likes to hear them, with thou and thee and sorry we sinned again. She's been praying already for hours for understanding, which, like the pony she begged for all last year, she knows she will never possess. But still, since it's time to address the all-knowing Father, whose workings, like the clocks, are a mystery, the girl casts her small shadow and weeps for a miracle and covers her glowing face with obedient hands. This is called Condemned. Franny, no, oh, it's in 3 parts. So this is number 1. Franny and I leave school with Debbie Nank, who's heard about Franny's house and wants to see it, and maybe step inside if she has the nerve. But because it's Friday, and Friday means Kraft macaroni, Franny runs the steep last block alone. Debbie freezes when we reach Franny's slumping porch, the house with its caving roof and glassless windows. She confides in me that if that's where she had to live, she'd race to the footbridge and hurl herself into the falls. Then she asks me where I live, which is downstairs from Franny. 2. Before waddling off to snooze in the dark all day, our mother's possum peeks out from his hole in the wall, one seated each evening with berries and cold spaghetti, and night crawlers pried from the ground with a carving fork. In volume O of A Neighbor's Funk and Wagnalls, in dawn's early light with coffee and some despair, she learns that the only marsupial in our country, not to mention the first one ever to live in her kitchen, belongs to the least evolved of all the species. Like her, for millions of years, he hasn't changed. But for now, she takes solace in her possum's opposable thumbs, the phalanx of fangs he bears in a pink-tongued yawn. Soon her children will waken and plague her with their needs. Okay, this is part 3. While Peggy draws John Lennon on the wall, I print in magic marker on the ceiling a poem I love about poppies and the dead. Mary cracks black walnuts with a rock and feeds the pieces to our sister Judy, who pries the rusted lid from a can of house paint so she and Tommy can camouflage their beds. In the kitchen, our happy mother plays Nelson Eddy so loud that it drowns out the screams of the couple upstairs. She is the reason, she tells us, why we are so smart, and smarts you can't buy, or we'd sell ours and get a TV. And my last poem is called JC and Me in the Summer of '64. Catholicism and puberty duked it out the summer my body broke out of its corral and galloped Patterson's streets in search of sugar through the new and luscious grasses of impure thought. The priest I confessed to dismissed me as overly scrupulous. I was thinking too much about thinking of dirty things, and distracted because the word scrupulous started with screw, I left with a head full of sin and 2 holy cards, which he passed me as if they were discards in holy strip poker, a game I imagined instructive and entertaining. The first was Saint Agatha, Sicily's virgin martyr. Her eyes rolled up to God, as often mine were. She would not renounce him, despite the terrible tortures he could, being God, have simply plucked her from. If it were me, I'd have just said, Jesus who? Then cantered right out of there with my virgin self and ducked behind the bleachers at Hinchliffe Stadium. The second holy card was Jesus himself, bathed in a golden light and softly smiling, halo tipped back and eyes beaming mercy and mirth. I hadn't noticed till then how handsome he was. Eyes like blue poppies, a nose I regarded with envy, wavy auburn hair with a center part. I pictured the halls of St. Ag's full of boys in caftans, and me with my black hair tossing in the hot pink short shorts that got me suspended from school. Imagine, I thought, when he too was confused and changing, not quite a man yet, and also, but not quite, God. Hear me calling his name, though he's already heading towards me, the August wind blowing his robe between his legs, the power to miracle lighting his holy face, a gingery fuzz on his lip, and an eager smile telling me I have powers too. At my nearness, his thoughts will cleave the Patterson Falls, send beer cans and tires jouncing down McBride, and cause the all-the-way hot dogs at Libby's lunch to vault like angels from their very secret sauce. Thank you.
Can't tell if I'm on or not, but here we go. There we go. Thank you so much, Kat. That was beautiful. I'm very fond of the Patterson Falls because they're both beautiful and terrifying. So some of this imagery is just taking me back a few years. And that line, someone in the chat said it too, that line, Catholicism and puberty, my gosh. That just rattled me. Thank you so much for that beautiful reading.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we're gonna go to our next reader. So let's see here what I wrote for Dimitri. Dimitri is a Boricua multidisciplinary artist, YouTuber, and educator from Newark, New Jersey. Dimitri's book, Every First and 15th, is the winner of the Digging Press 2020 Chapbook Award. And some of his work has been nominated for a Pushcart and Best of the Net. You can find more of his writing in Poma Day, Vinyl, Quelly, Duende, Obsidian, and Acentos. He is the Marketing and Communications Director at CavanKerry Press. To learn more about Dimitri, you can visit his website at DimitriReyesPoet.com. And Dimitri, I am excited to hear you read, so let's go. You're muted.
Technology does that. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Gracias, Gessy, for introducing me and for publishing my book. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being with me this evening. Like I said, every time I try to organize a reading, I always try to assemble a dream team. So I was thinking, who would I want to have on my own dream team from CavanKerry and Mandy and Digging Press, and then Mandy's here, Jessy's here, Kat is here, and David's here. Thank you all for being here. So I talk a lot, so I'll try to not talk so much. I did preface that Gretchen Primack is in the audience, and Gretchen was the first vegan poet I've ever researched and run into, because there aren't that many. There's more now. So there's Mandy, there's myself, there's Gretchen, there's Roske, there's a couple of others. But it wasn't easy to find these people a couple of years ago. But I found Gretchen, and then we were we were able to meet at Split This Rock in 2018, and we became vegan brothers and sisters and poets ever since. So Gretchen, I love you. Thank you for being here. And now we have a mutual friend in Mandy also. So I'm actually going to start with that poem too. And this poem is called Pegao. And the only thing you'll need to know is that pegao is the Puerto Rican term for that hard rice that you have to scrape from the bottom of the pot. Did you hear? Did you see? Have you seen? Do you know? 4 apartments, the store, the restaurant, the bar, the typically happy place, 4 apartamentos, la bodega, el bachatípico, a mound of rubble, a mound of rice, fell asleep while cooking, el bachatípico was closed, oil left in the frying pans, fell asleep while cooking, aceite, dormido, en el caldero waiting to be lit. Did you hear the alarms? The alarms sounding like the trucks, the alarms sounding like the people. Did you see fuego, el fire, the lighting of the stove, the street corner, a stove, 4 familias, a mound of rice turned with a spoon like matchsticks, like pegao among the short grains. Have you seen a flame retardant mattress folded under rubble? The untouched pink princess plastics, an easy bake oven, el horno on high, empty gallons of oil, refrigerators, ashes of arroz, sliced bread, candy, lit cigarettes, lotto tickets, the many plastic cubbies at the front of the store that held it all together. Did you hear the 4 apartments crashing? Did you see El Bachatípico, the mounds of rice turn black, the pegao? Have you seen her easy bake oven? Have you seen the still intact mattress? Did you know the dusty storefront mats, the Bacardi dance floors, the people, the fire? Yes. So there was a lot of fires in the past several years that have been happening in the city of Newark. And it's a likening to some of what happened in the Bronx during the 70s with the Bronx burnings. And it is said that there's a tax collection going on from these facilities, or the lack of maintenance. And because we had something that was a bit more biblical, I'll go for that here too. And this one's called Quick Profit. It's spelled Prophet. He is myth, and he only stays this way, remaining ticket fresh, for the ink of a cheap ride bleeds. Only 4 for $5. He has no hands, just battering rams. He has no hands, just tickets, so call him your dispensary. You get to work on time because of him. You save enough every week for a sandwich, you tell me. That he's the StubHub of the Penn Station line. That 4 for $5 is all it takes to make you happy, because someone took a chance to give you those tickets 40 cents below the price of a ticket you don't want to buy. You don't knock the hustle. You don't knock it anyway, because he's here before any coffee, book bag, and suitcase. You don't knock the way he gets these tickets, because ticket cheap is your wicked jive, and it gets you to work on time. Some people call him a scalper. Bad news. Maybe you do too, but you know that he knows these tickets are also blood seeping indigo, the color of your timestamp. So fresh, and so you don't knock the hustle because you punch your ticket the same way he's been punching for these tickets. So take yours with no question, only 4 for $5. And I'll do 2 more. And the last one I'll end on some of like kind of the urban pastorals, right? This book, Every First and 15th, is basically an ode to the city and is an urban pastoral in and of itself. So I'll finish with a barbershop poem, which I always say, funny enough, I don't really go to the barbershop anymore, but it feels funny having this kind of poem in here, but here it is. On the 7th day, the barber pieced me up. I asked him for aventura. He said this place serves history, no adventure without cleansing. We talked sports and more music, and I wondered if he should fade my temples into a 1, 2, or 3, cut me close enough to call me Brooklyn. I'm not a Puerto Rican from Brooklyn, but sitting in this chair gets me closer every week. I see a new reflection between the framed rooster and flag, another framed pair of boxing gloves, another man's hands framed on the wall next to Jesus. His hands, the same pinned icon to gather the beads on my neck, nailed to this chair. My hair is just a simple sacrifice. To grant another man's permission is to feel a straight razor to my temple, resisting a resistance for the sake of beauty, the madness crafted in the beatitude of a shape-up to match a trimmed brow. For $12 a week, I can watch my hair revive itself unruly. In 3 days, I will covet next Friday to be born again, fresh to death, to watch heavy clippers in a hand and feel them quake on my crown, to almost feel as if the earth could tremble. All right, this is the last one. I'll end on a newer poem. I have an interesting relationship with the city, especially since I'm an artist that usually gets put in the position of organizing or teaching the youth outside of what I do at CavanKerry. And I'm always interested in the conversations we have with space. So this poem is called Before Whole Foods, and I will premise this by saying that there's a beautiful Whole Foods in downtown Newark now. And before that, it was a large pharmacy and a chicken place called Planet Wings and Newark Drugs. And I remember being there as a child, and it was still on the up and up, a bit more run down from the riots and the rebellion of 67 and 74. But now I just walk around there and it looks so different. And it's important that we honor those things that happened before that. And even before, kind of like either the golden era to the rebellion that everyone thinks of when they think of Newark. So again, this one's called Before Whole Foods. It started rich. Anyone who passed, people in and out. This was before the word rebellion could sputter, before monorails and police on horseback, before brick and rifle, before the stores were rifled, newspapers, fire, hose, before those pictures of black and white blood that were once colored, always colored like produce. Before elected officials, there were mansions, plantations before wages. Prison was the afterthought of resistance, stops on the Underground Railroad. Before the haunted buildings, there were lanterns in the night. And before that were old cemeteries, and before that, ancient burial grounds, the foundations of highways. Before cars, there were spirits. In the eyes of the bourgeoisie, do you know who carries those who carry everyone else on their shoulders? Corpses. Before AmeriCorps, before Covenant House, before the Shani Baraka Center, before Cura, before Aspira, before White Flight, like doves, there were high-rises, rubble, busted windows, not yet busted, brick roads. Before this city had a nickname, before Michael B. Jordan and Black Panther, before Michael K. Williams and The Wire, before Whitney and Voice, before Baraka and Dope, epidemics and welfare queens, Ginsburg and Roth, Reagan, Roosevelt, and Lincoln at the First Baptist Church, there was the seaport, the Morris Canal, the Ballantine Distillery, more spirits. Before the pawn shop and Woolworths, Shorter and Sinatra, there was Robert Treat. Before that, blues. The color the city's children always sang and wrote and read and spoke. Before Afro art in the Newark Museum. And that was before Express Newark, the print shop, Galleria Ferro, Glassroots, City Without Walls, Paul Robeson, and Algira's. Before Penn Station and underground light rail systems in front of Lot Less and the Nike factory. Before that, Dr. J's, VIM, the Fortress of Solitude, the source of knowledge, where we learn hip hop, house, rock, punk, jazz. There was a different kind of trap. Where less than 60 years ago, I couldn't debate whether Tahitian 3-bean hummus is worth its $6 price in this building. Not because this was before Puerto Ricans were suspect that hummus was good, but because 60 years ago was just a blink. See, Newark always has a new character arc. Before Branchbrook Park, Belleville, Bloomfield, before Harrison and East Newark, there was Newark. And before Newark, there was Weequay and Lenape and ducks, deer, birds, trees, plants, sun, mosquitoes, crickets, butterflies, bees, and water. Summer and winter. They're still here. Language, spoken word, all of this. And they would produce abundance. For all this abundance, before now and later, there is still abundance. And before all this, well, there is only perspective, wind and breath and knowledge, which hurts the most. All right. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, just thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that's here. No one of the participants dropped, so that means I didn't take too long. But now what I want to do, I want to bring in David, Dearest David, which we became pretty great friends within the past couple of months, pushing his book, A Half-Life, which just came out in February. And I honor this man for everything he does on the page, but also what he does for the community at the university level. And thank you for all your work that you're doing, David. Like I said, both on and off the page. Let me get to your bio. So David S. Cho was born and raised in the Chicago area, along with his brother and extended family, the proud children of Korean immigrants in the early 1970s. He holds a BA from the University of Illinois, MFA and MA from Purdue University, and MAT and PhD from the University of Washington, and has taught in West Lafayette and Crawfordsville, Indiana, Chicago and Seattle, and Tacoma, Washington. Formerly an associate professor of English and director of the American Ethnic Studies program at Hope College, he now serves as the director of the Office of Multicultural Development at Wheaton College. He is the author of a chapbook, Song of Our Songs, 2010, a book of poems, Night Sessions, 2011, which was by CavanKerry Press, and a scholarly monograph on 20th century Korean American novels, Lost in Translation, 2017. And I will be putting the information for A Half-Life in the chat. And David, if you can hold that book up for a sec, that beautiful, beautiful cover, that would be great. Ladies and gentlemen, here is David Cho.
All right, thank you so much. That's quite an introduction and quite a high bar to go after all of you. So thank you. So I had some poems selected, but after hearing from you all, I just swapped them up. So again, from the book, Dimitri always has me post this picture of my mom and dad. Seems like cultural history is a theme for today. For all the poems, actually quite amazingly so. So I'll read a few poems from there. I'll get us into the city of Chicago. So I'll just read a few poems and keep track of time. Chicago Highway Poems, number 1, Lakeshore Drive. Here on Lakeshore Drive, you can eat curry buffet on the Devon exit, no meat for $2.95. See the Pawn Elephant jewelry shops, and on Bellman, see the Over Roman gift shop proclaim, tenemos telefónicas, tarjetas para vender, and sell clothes on the side. Go to Lawrence, hear the karaoke bass blast, smell the seasoned fried legs of chicken, meat dumplings, and buy a pizza, sausage, cheese, and fermented rice cabbage, kimchi for spice on top. To know what happiness is, go to Hyde Park where the Latinos lay down their shirts, let out their hair, let the Spanglish flow, and play soccer. To know sadness, visit Wrigley Field and be me for one day in just this. I love the Cubs. Ballpark of green ivy, nectar of Budweiser, the official gut filler of the Northsiders. We're the king of beers, to love a team who melted down, second to the Mets in '69, choking on the Chicago heat, humidity, and most probably a red hot dog of the 45 World Series. Cubs fans, there's always next year. The proverbial underachievers, the lovable losers. We know the heartache of Harry Carey, who died before the Bryant, Baez, Rizzo, and Epstein-led 2016 World Series championship. Harry, may you now rest in peace. To know sorrow, stand by me at a Dempster Street funeral where a mother of my friend stops breathing from her sobbing, becomes a Korean coiled Z, all knees and shoulders heaving in the ground as her son's casket is lowered. She wants to follow him to the grave, but the father stops her. He is as pale as a ghost, and the hymn is not yet over. Welcome to Chicago, the billboard over O'Hare, I-90, 94 says, thank you. This autumn, this is Chicago, this is home. 2, 94 East. Chicago is crowned like a prince. If you don't believe me, see the skyscraper domes and climb the Sears Tower. Watch Lake Michigan labor to wind out the smog of chimneys, furnaces, exhaust pipes, millions of them like stems on fruit, and see the fog roll in from the north and settle in over the city like silver gray velvet on a crown. Chicago is the Windy City. Chicago is not an apple. Chicago is meat. Chicago is a Sinclair made famous city that ripped the hides off swine, bovine, slicing buttocks for ham, sternums cracked, chests laid bare, laid rib open bare like the nautical bones of a ship hung vertical, packed its stockyard trains and unpacked them with dirt cheap immigrant laborers whose hands became pink from the cold air, their own hands becoming leather. Chicago is a city of broken noses. Listen to one say, hot dog, the Bulls, the Bears, the coach, Dick Butkus, Mike Ditka, the Chicago beloved whose iron fist once shattered, hitting an equipment locker, saying after, let's win one for Lefty, hooray. This is Chicago. I once asked Johnny, who wanted to work for my father, if he had a green card. He smiled and said, no, but I could get one. I never asked again. Johnny worked 2 jobs, one for my father, another hold in a factory, bought at home, got married, had 3 kids, sent money back home to family, hoping to someday return as a prodigal son, gone American, come home. Billboards higher than the crosses say, when it rains, it pours. Morton Salt, you are right. You are always right. In the summer, when it rains, it pours all heat and humidity in Chicago like a curse from God. Listen to the oscillating cries of locusts in the trees. But wait until the winter. When it snows, lips under a wool hat freeze, chap, stiffen. Curse the Lord Almighty. Car windows crack and spread like a spider's web. Kids warm themselves by the muffler like an old potbelly stove. Parents shoveling snow and ice for a week with a spade and shovel laying salt. When it snows, it pours. Chicago is not ashamed. Chicago is a city that works, a city once burned to ashes by the hoof of an overmilled cow, railed by Capone bullet mobbings and prohibited beer. Riots in 1919 raised up highways in the 50s, road lights everywhere like old gas lights, built skyscrapers whose antennas touched the clouds in the 70s, saw the 80s horizon of homes shake from the O'Hare Boeing plane thunder. The Kennedy, Eisenhower, the Dan Ryan. Driving these highways gives you hope like a cross. Vatican, Greek, Orthodox, Episcopalian, First United Methodist, crosses that stick out like chimneys, crosses that stick out like a mother, Holy Church of the Virgin Mary, where a Holy Father can lead you to repentance. Chicago keeps its business in the family. See the guts of a father, his hot dog store bought when old man Daly was still mayor, arrive at dawn, work the grill with his sons, go home at dawn, balding, bellies all full of meat, Richard M. Daly, the old man's son, becoming mayor too. Have it your way, says Ray Kroc of the McDonald's Company on a billboard over I-90. Chicago will. It always will. So I'll go there. I think for time, I'll just go to another Chicago poem. This one, I think, took 25 years to write. So it's the initial one for my wife. Because if you're a poet, then everyone asks, do you write poems for your wife? And I was like, I got one, and just kept working on it. So after 25 years with CavanKerry, here goes. I'll probably end on this one for time. A love poem for my wife. Today the wind blows, it is Chicago, and it is cold. So cold the window has streaked the clouds into puddle blues, still with resolve, or so it seems. So resolved, the sun tries to set itself lower on the horizon. Lower in Chicago means dropping beneath the line, cement, steel, sand, and lake water. It's a cemented gray of exhaust on snow, salt-ridden tires, highways covering the city like a maze, cars scurrying like mice. And back to the subject, I do not know why I do not write love poems to my wife. A question asked of me, when plain faces turn quizzical, an opening of the eye, a circling twitch of the lips, I do not know why I do not write love poems to my wife. Today it snows in Chicago. The wind carries the flurry of flakes off the lake. The wind so brusque, it carries itself off the frozen lake. The snow suddenly stopping. It is windy in Chicago. Today, I wish a love poem for my wife would arise like this broken windowed 3-storied red brick building, arise from a field of long dead Chicago grass, yellowed, the whispers of wheat and prairie grass in its heads holding the promise of spring. This building set atop this field, set atop timber, steel, and cut stone cylinders in this muddy marsh, this great layer of jelly. The Chicago cake of clay, water, and gravel. A love poem for my wife that would rise like the sun over Lake Michigan, a red, hazy blanket, like the sun setting, a dark crown over this field, this building, this second city, the city of impossible contradiction, the city of two seasons, winter and construction, this city whose fall season is too short, yet two golden burnt orange and brown leaf fall glorious. This city of animals, the bears, cubs, bulls, and apparel, the White Sox. This city of hard work, harder vowels, consonants, and sharp syllables. You could hear it in the mellifluous staccato of its heroes, Mike Ditka, Dick Buckus, Walter Payton. You can hear it in the rattling barrage of the L, the elevated train crisscrossing the city. You see the red lights, the scarlet pair of eyes, fading in the distance, wheel sparks on the steel tracks, creating its own heat, creating its own swishing wind, the winter gale off the lake, creating a swirl of snow. This windy city of my birth, this city of broad shoulders, for this Korean American woman I so love, finally, a love poem. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I guess it's Dimitri there. I'm not sure where Dimitri is. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And the Chicago imagery, for someone who's not from Chicago, was just so vivid, and there's so much love there. There's a love story that's there with Chicago as well as with your wife. So I really felt that. And that Chicago grass, oh my gosh. Like, I never associate grass with Chicago, so thank you for that imagery. That was great.
David, thank you always for being so receptive to reading with us, and I always love hearing your work. It's so powerful. Thank you. Okay, so now what we've all been waiting for, the publisher of Digging Press. I'm going to introduce you all to Gessy Alvarez. And Gessy, thank you. I always say it's an honor to be published with Digging Press. Y'all make such beautiful work. So Gessy, when you're done, if you want to plug the deals that are going on during SMOL Fair with our books, and just talk about how beautiful these books are. I would love you to, because what you do is amazing. It only takes someone that is as passionate as you are to do it, and I appreciate you for it. Let's get underway because I can't wait to hear your voice. Gessy Alvarez is the founder of Digging Press, a small independent press that publishes Digging Through the Fat, a journal for cultural omnivores, and a chapbook series. She earned an MFA from Columbia University. Her work has appeared in Hobart, Astoria, Lunch Ticket, Volume 1 Brooklyn, and other publications. You can find out more about her work at Gessy Alvarez and diggingpress.com. And again, that is Gessy with a G. Ladies and gents, Gessy Alvarez.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. And thank you so much to all the readers tonight, Kat, Mandy-Suzanne, David, Dimitri. Your works just makes me want to go off and write new stories because they're just so good. So thank you so much. So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to read the very first chapter of my novel. And the novel's titled Last Kingdom in Astoria. It begins during a blackout in Queens, New York, on a hot July day in 2006. The protagonist is a father of a teenage girl. Her name is Maris, and the father likes to refer to himself as the king. He is a widower. His deceased wife's name is Helena. So hopefully that gives you a little setup. Helena, you used to call me your king. Now your ashes are in an urn that sits in a niche at Calvary. Maris calls me the king, like she feels nothing for her father, like I'm a big joke to her. And at 16, she acts like I should be happy she's around. She's doing me a favor. And I tolerate this because I still have you watching over us, soothing my deepest insecurities. But Helena, how can you help me now? This infernal July is plagued by heat waves and thunderstorms. I prefer the storms because Maris stays home, and though I never question what she does in her room, at least I know she's there, cursing me through the walls. But the heat waves are intolerable, and she's gone all day. sometimes all night. And tonight there's a blackout and Maris is not home. I'm used to the late nights. I'm used to the overnighters. It's become a pattern. Monday and Tuesday, she's home by midnight. Wednesday and Thursday, she's locked inside her room. Friday and Saturday, I disappear. And when I finally get home on a Sunday afternoon, her door is open. I don't bother to look in or let her know I'm home. If she emerges for dinner, I'm happy. If I don't see her until Monday morning, I avoid speaking to her, hoping my silence communicates disappointment and not fear. I steal glances, make sure she's in one piece, except for the occasional dark circles around her eyes and her matted hair. She usually is. Tonight, I called her from my flip phone, voicemail. I don't leave her a message. Why waste my breath? She'll come home eventually. There's no power in the apartment, and I have 2 bars left on the flip phone. Our cordless phone is no longer plugged into the landline. Helena, do you remember the day we met? You were new to Queens, new to the languages spoken on every corner. The smells of spices you never knew existed. Like everyone else, you confused me for Puerto Rican. And when I shook my head, you guessed Colombian. And less convincingly, Greek, Italian. Sometimes someone with a good ear and a deeper understanding of how I carry my voice, my body around, would guess right and say Dominican. Embarrassed, I would quickly assert my Iberian heritage. My grandfather was from the Canary Islands. I'd insist. And in between eye rolls, I'd say, he bought land in DR and married a local farmer's daughter. My family was one of 5 families who incorporated a small town in the northwest tip of the Dominican Republic. And these pioneering families intermarried, and an enclave of children with light brown hair and hazel eyes populated the town. These children stood in contrast to the laborers and their brown, black, and all the shades in between children. My parents were second cousins or third. It was always unclear. And my father left my mother once they immigrated to New York City. I was raised by my grandmother and my mother. But you don't care about my past. It's not as if I could remember the details from those lost toddler years. And it's not like my mother, whose eyesight was failing by the time you met her, and whose rheumatoid arthritis kept her from leaving her apartment. It's not like she would have told you the whole story. My grandmother was long gone by the time we got together. And my father, he may still be alive, but I haven't seen or heard from him in over 20 years. There's no one left who could invent a cryptic family saga. You never asked for this story, never seemed to desire the knowledge. You trust me completely. You call me your king, and Astoria is our kingdom, away from your Jersey Shore home and your domineering Russian father and the boyfriend you thought would marry you, but who left you out there with an ocean that always felt too cold for you to enjoy. Helena, tonight I'm grateful you're nearby. The darkness is a great comfort, but there's never any silence in Queens. Car alarms and sirens populate the night. Maris is out there, our only child, our essence. I know you sense the truth. Helena, that I'm relieved that Maris is gone. With some guilt, I feel we no longer need Maris. We were a family together, but now that she's gone, is there room for me to be the person you believed I was? We can go back and relive our love affair before Maris interrupted it. I know you're scared because we made her together, and without her, what are we to each other? Maris will come back eventually. She always does. She will come back and live as my idea of who she is. She'll want to make me happy, just as you want to make me happy. Freedom is meaningless without experiencing the pleasure of pleasing someone you love. And Maris loves me. She's my daughter. And no matter how long she's gone, that will never be untrue. We are bound to each other forever. Thank you so much.
Wow, Gessy, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that so much, especially because the last time we had an interview together, we were talking about this book. So to talk about it and then to hear it, it's so great. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing space with us, and I thank you for sharing that story. To let everyone else know, because I don't know who, I don't think you mentioned it. How long have you been at this? How long have you been at this novel now? And I'm gonna bring everyone else in also, because we'll probably start the Q&A now.
The novel, I've been busy doing many different things over the years, and the novel sort of has been hovering just like Helena. It's been hovering over my head all these years, and any chance I get to write a little bit, I did. So it's been with me for a long time, and during the pandemic is when I finally hit that end word. I finally typed that end word, and it felt amazing. But who knows? Who knows if it's actually finished? I don't know, but I think it's getting there.
Right. I don't really have a direction to this question, but I do see a theme. I see a couple of themes, but one theme I see in all of ours is that idea of love and how it permeates itself in different ways, right? So I'd like to know, for both the prose writers and poets, is there ever an end when we're writing on the concept of love, or is it something like cyclical or slippery, that every time we think we have an idea of what that definition actually means, or how to describe that experience, it just kind of keeps slipping away? So just what the experience is about writing on love, for the panelists, I'd like to have a quick discussion about.
I guess for the Ama, well, or from how I see the Ama, how I think of them, love for the ocean and for non-human animals in it is very complicated, because they understand that they're predators. They understand that they're killing, but they also are working hard to try and conserve their ecosystem. And I think, and in my vision of them, like, they also love non-humans as individual beings, so that makes it very complicated for them to kill and eat them, but like also see them as not just resources but alive, and that's a kind of very conflicted way of loving. But like, in other cultures, we just, especially in Western cultures, we just use other beings. We don't worry about the love, And so, and the Ama are committed to, even at the price of having to live in poverty, which many of them do, like, are committed to conserving as many animals as they can.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you so much. So anyone else want to follow that thread, the complexities of love, right? And the complexities of love when you're also thinking about survival is what I'm hearing from there. Kat, do you have anything you'd like to add? How do you do love in your work?
I'm sorry.
Yeah?
I'm sorry, Dimitri, did you say something to me?
Oh yeah. I pitched it over to you. I was saying, how do you deal with love and the complexities of love in your own work?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I think everything I write is a love poem. Attention is love, and to give to give something the attention it requires to take it into a poem and make it and have it shine for what you feel it to be. That's to me, that's the love, is to bring out what you have felt for someone else, but it's in the work, it's in the words of the work that make it come across, the way you show the person, of course, and what you give the person to say.
Excellent. Thank you. And can you hear me? Mic check. I'm good. Sorry with all the
You're
technical
good.
difficulties this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
David, 25 years of this love poem. Let's talk about it. That's not a good way to approach that, right? 25 years. Let's talk about it.
That's okay. I don't know if that was the zinger that you were mentioning earlier, but
It wasn't. It wasn't. It was better before.
well, I guess I'm thankful for deadlines. That does keep us going, right? To get that stuff, because there is no end to it. I think you're right. And I really want to echo what Mandy mentioned. I think part of the job of a writer, though it is kind of weird, right? You're entering this fragile yet resilient ecosystem. And I think you can be faithful to that, to let the world know that in all the different ways that we all did, even with Jesse's last one. I think that's really one of the tasks that we have as poets then, and to make that material. And then as we write it, there's all these dimensions that come out of it, or in the fiction and stuff as well. So that'd be my answer. I would probably suggest to all of you, don't write a love poem about a brick wall. I don't think that's going to go too well, right? My wife's like, how romantic, right? So with a lot of sarcasm. So, what can you do?
Thank you, David. Jesse, how are you wrestling with love in your work?
So to me, love it equates to immortality. I think that in the universe, love is what keeps humanity going, and it is what ties us together, whether we have it or not. It's always sort of this omnipresence. And the characters I love to write are the ones that feel like no one loves them, right? That they're always just trying to find who loves them. I think that is a very real thing. Even if you have someone you love, you sort of never believe it. How could it be possible? This sort of unselfish feeling, and it's that abstract that I think is really interesting, and I love trying to bring that abstract into the love stuff that I'm writing about.
Right. Yeah. And I'm feeling that, like, the longer I write, the more I realize that, in a way, and hear me out, like, love is kind of conditional, right? Because there's so many emotional signatures of what that love is like, right? There's kind of like an ecosystem of emotions, or kind of just like a certain environment for what love is like, depending on what emotions are eliciting from a poem. And I feel like love comes through in a number of different ways, right? Like just passion, or just a deep thought, or nostalgia, or even a love for something that's like completely painful, right? I'm interested in the abstractions of love, and how we could expand the definition of what that means, especially when I'm writing about the city a lot. And though I do love my city, there are a lot of things, a la the Newark Renaissance, which is a huge conversation about gentrification that's happening within the city. And I know everyone's experiencing this everywhere, with the rising of gas prices, and housing, and food. And then on top of that, you have this place that was the city that was so community oriented, and had such a bad rap for a bunch of different things, and given so many things during the dope epidemic, and et cetera, et cetera. And now we're on the precipice of a big arts movement. So what does that mean in terms of loving your city and loving that change, and how complicated that is? And then it affects those people around that. And Jesse, you were talking about that in terms of characters. So that was another interesting question I had. Like, what's everyone's approach to the characterization of the people they choose to write about? Because we were all talking about people, today. We were talking about culture, but it was all people oriented. So how do we all approach our different characters that make up what we write? And Gessy, maybe I could kick it back to you and then we'll go back in the opposite direction.
You know, I when I think of a character, again, it's not so much, I don't have any idea of the actual person. I don't relate it to someone I know or anything like that. Like it's purely, I feel a need to try to discover something. And so I create a character that is able to discover that sort of thing. Do we lose David?
Yeah, David had to go. He had to do another matter.
Okay.
Yeah, but he sent his goodbyes. Gessy, can you say the last two sentences again?
I'm not sure if I can, but I think
Sorry.
characterization for me is not really about people. It's about ideas, is basically what I'm saying.
Okay,
So
got it.
I'm working more with an idea, and then I kind of create a character to fit that idea and bring that idea to life.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Kat? Oh, hold on, because I'll ask you to unmute. You have like the mute genie happening today.
There we go.
There
Okay.
you go.
I tend to write about characters who are in trouble. So it's usually what exposes them or gives insight into them, I guess, is how they escape from or suffer or find something worth loving or living for in various situations. So it's usually, you know, I write narratives, and it's how they emerge from whatever is probably going wrong that would show their character, help me develop them. And then I draft them until they give up their deepest thoughts. And that's it.
Excellent. Just keep writing at it. Keep writing at it. Just massage the personality out. Thank you, Kat.
Thank
Mandy?
you.
Well, this doesn't answer the question, but I just wanted to comment on how awesome Jesse's character of the king just really is, because he thinks he's the king. You can hear, you know, his arrogance in his voice, and yet he is in awe. He is like blown away by the fact that he is loved by Helena, or was loved by Helena, still to this day, you know, and like you can feel that in the prose. Like I have the advantage of having read a little more of it, but like I think even in the bit that we heard, you can hear his arrogance clashing with his total lack of a sense of self-worth. And I just find that so amazing. I love self-contradictory characters, you know, Dostoevsky and all that. But yeah, so, but for me, it's just different with each project. For Owabi, it actually began with the prey, with the abalone. I was thinking about them first. Just, I have this, Gretchen knows I have a thing about snails. I just love looking at snails and thinking about them. So, you know, it started with them, and then I found these amazing women who were in this crazy situation of trying to both make a living from them, because that's the only livelihood that they had known for generations and generations, and realizing that, you know, this can't go on, you know. So like at the time when I first started thinking about them, like almost 10 years ago, the Ama were trying really hard to have a sort of renaissance through tourism, so that, you know, to get people to come in and visit them. And it was a little sad because they had to promote themselves as a dying way of life, you know, and that in order to try and survive. So in a way, they and the abalone, who really are really in trouble, some species in the US are totally extinct. You know, they are in a very similar situation to the prey themselves, you know, but many of them like cannot live any other way, or they're, you know, there are divers who are still in their 80s and still diving, you know.
Wow.
It's great. It's really hard for them to attract younger people to the way of life, and they feel bad they don't really want to, you understand, why knock yourself out and doing this when you could just go to the city and sit at a desk.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so for me, like the characters grew out of from their situation with respect to their prey.
Thank you so much for that, Mandy. It's really interesting how we could kind of draw these threads even across oceans, right? For a North kid to say that there's a problem with gentrification, right? And there's this movement of people, and we're not wanting certain folks to come in. There's other areas that need people to come in, right? Like even on the island of Puerto Rico, they're also having a big issue with like cryptocurrency and folks kind of changing the dynamic of how economics work on the island. But that's kind of the only way a lot of those towns are making money. So it's a very complicated relationship with the idea of movements, deeply rooted in those ideas of colonization as well and capitalism. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you also for everyone that's in the audience on Zoom and on Facebook and watching this on YouTube in the future audience members. We are drawing to a close. I always like ending our CavanKerry readings or any other reading with this last question. And I do see that a couple of my students are in the audience, so this is perfect for you all. What would have you said to that writer 10 years ago that you wish you should have said earlier? And I think I'll go first. And what I would have said to myself, and this would have been even before I started writing, was to just not feeling like you just have to do one thing, explore, and don't do things just because other people are telling you to do them artistically or in any other way, right? Just try to carve your own path, because as writers, our pens carve their own path regardless. So the sooner we're not in our own way, the sooner we can explore and really try to create something new. But what about you all? Something you would have told yourself 10 years ago as an author?
Well, I think mine is along the same lines, Dimitri. It's we all have this intuition as creative, the people that want to create things. We have this intuition, and when we start off, there's a lot of doubt, and the doubt sometimes takes over, and the intuition sort of disappears a little bit because you don't trust it for whatever reason. So I think really just sticking to your intuition, committing to it. And it's scary because it's going to take you to places that maybe you don't feel ready to go to, or that you're prepared to do. But if you're feeling you're not prepared to do it, that is more incentive to do it. You really won't really know if you're prepared unless you do it. So I think that's the one thing that I would tell myself: just go for it, and do you.
Thank you, Gessy.
I think I would say like, oh, sorry.
No, Mandy, you can go. That's fine.
It's just, I think I would say like, however long a project takes, you should let it take that long. Don't be afraid to put it aside for 10 years and come back in a decade and, with new perspectives, new maturity, new vocabulary, and I wish I had known that it was okay to do that rather than pushing some things to their conclusions when I think I could have written them better now.
Man, that's very insightful, Mandy. Thank you. Pat, you want to finish us off?
Yeah, I want to say I really relate to what Mandy just said. I said, oh yes, I recognize that. There's a book called Slow Writing, which sounds like it goes against, it's completely counterintuitive, but it gives you that time to be the person who would write that, perhaps in a better voice, a more genuine voice. 10 years ago, I was saying to myself, when are you going to finish that manuscript? And I wish I had taken more time away from, I was teaching and sixth graders, and I wish I hadn't let it be so consuming, but I also don't regret a minute of what I put into that classroom. So anyway, I'm glad to be out of it and happy to be writing again.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Kat. Sixth graders. That's an interesting year.
Oh,
That's a big transition year. You know, things are happening.
oh, and the teacher you got little footprints all over your face, you know.
Oh, oh wow. Thank you so much, ladies, and David when he watches this video later, for such a great evening. Thank you all so much. And thank you all that have been here. Like I said, for the rest of this week, and I've said it in the chat, I don't think I've said it in person, Kat Doty's book, as well as David's book, is a part of a 30% off sale happening at CavanKerry. And if you order within the next week and you use the coupon code, sorry, SMOL Fair, AWP22, you'll also get free shipping. So if you do that, you'll get free shipping and you'll be able to get 30% off. So please, please, please do that. Gessy, you want to say something for Digging Press?
We're not having a sale, but we are having free shipping. So do go to the Digging shop at diggingpress.com. And like I said, Mandy-Suzanne's second printing is we're doing the pre-sales, the pre-sales. And of course, Dimitri is in his second printing already. And thank you. And so, yes, go shop and, visit us and visit our website.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Digging Press is an awesome, awesome place. So I suggest everyone to visit it. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask everyone to unmute and say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thanks for everything.